So it was always a beefy metric, and we're realizing it's kind of a whole new category where next steps we're going to be moving it toward more of a program based on the assessment being used, and figuring out how to incorporate programs into our website so that people can see this really extensive, useful playbook of effectively measuring the conversation in your community through qualitative and quantitative data. But for us, it's definitely out of scope as this individual metric. So it's cool. And looks like we ended up with 9 annotated footnotes, which is far fewer than Sean started with. So I'm very impressed with his ability to reduce the scope of it, which is always hard. It's always hard to get simpler instead of more complex. So
I had a thought on this.
Very cool.
As it becomes a program, so it would be one of 3, I think, and you can all tell me if I'm wrong, but we'd have the badging program, we would have the community reports program, and then we would have SCMS as program. And for the badging program, we have Matt. Jane is coming in.
Cool.
I admitted.
Okay, I don't know. Hi, Jane. I don't know who you're new.
Yeah.
Jane cannot hear us yet.
Okay.
Well, yeah, let's keep going. Nothing private here.
Yeah, no, nothing private. I just was, and so then.
Yeah, you're just like.
Who is this? Yes, hello.
Oh, it's Jane. It's Jane. Oops. Yeah.
Oh, it's Sean.
Yeah, I'm logging in for my daughter's account apparently this time.
Oh, that's cool. Jane's such a great name.
It is. She's a great kid.
Sean, I like your shirt.
Oh, thanks. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Matt
way to go, match keys.
Yeah, we always like to dress alike. I let Matt have the hair, though.
Unrelated, real quick.
Yeah.
Do you see these little bastards? They're just like ripped.
There's geese.
Put that way.
I don't see. Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. They're just like. I had a woodpecker the other day, and I have an abandoned children's play fort, like with a slide in my backyard that is like a squirrel condo during the day. So there's just like squirrels all over it all day long, and I can see it out of the corner of my window, and I'm like, this is hilarious.
That's pretty entertaining.
I'm not a gardener, or else I'd be at war with the squirrels.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say I'm not a gardener. I haven't gardened in a number of years. It's always something. Somebody wouldn't mind sharing my notes again since I showed up late.
Yeah, no worries.
So the I almost beat you. So as I was kind of saying, so we have 3 programs, and one would be the SCMS program. And so for the other 2 programs, I kind of see Matt Snell as being a person who can help kind of shepherd that project along. Of course, other people will be involved, but we have somebody who can kind of attend to new issues or PRs around the program, as it changes over time. And then with the community reports, I had asked Vinod to kind of help shepherd that process along, right? So as we produce those reports. So should we ask Dylan or Venya, like how they can commit to making sure that project gets shepherded along? Because one of the things we're pretty attentive to in the CHAOSS project is not having kind of untended to areas of the project. And I think that's going to be pretty important.
I love that. Excuse me. And we were saying something. Oh. Something along the lines of it. SCMS being like kind of hosted in value, but then you're saying like we have like somebody who's specifically on point for tending to the program.
Yeah, I think like badging is clearly in D&I, but it's being tended by Matt Snell.
Yep. Yeah. And then I asked Vinod to do the community reports, just kind of make sure that like if somebody needs to be contacted, like Sean, if you need to be contacted, or just who's that person that can kind of help coordinate if things kind of get a little slow or look a little
I love that. Where does community reports kind of live if we're following the same analogy?
It's another program, but I think it lives under the general chaos
Yeah.
org in that case, because it's about delivering something specific at the project level, right?
Okay.
Like it's not a program, or it's not a program. It's a, or is it, we're calling them programs?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
program,
Yeah.
but it doesn't live in a working group,
Right.
so to speak.
Yeah. It's a program that serves sort of a larger interest of all of us.
Right. Yeah, I'm just kind of gleaning this definition of a program by our own standards from these examples of like, okay, there's it's a thing that's more complex than an individual metric or even just a small collection of metrics. It's like something we're offering with some sort of service, interface to it, to use that term loosely. And then on top of that, we also are assigning, like, we have somebody, it may live in a working group and it has some sort of point person that you can rely on.
Right.
Yes.
And like
Exactly.
we've got like a very nice definition, so it almost serves us well to just standardize it and say like community reports could live in common, for example.
They could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's I think the key distinction between a working group and these programs is that the programs include both the definitions of the ontology, but also the creation of processes and systems to support them. And they're fundamentally more complicated than an atomic metric. I mean, those
I
are the things
love
we
the way you
talked
said
about.
that, Sean.
I hope it's being recorded because then someone can go back and remember it.
Yeah,
like,
I wrote it down and it's recorded. So
okay, good.
But
Because I seldom remember the things I say that people like.
I relate to that. That's why I like
So,
podcasting too. Yeah.
One of the thoughts that I have on the program definition is the service part, something that we provide as a CHAOSS community to others. And right now, I'm not entirely sure what that would be for the SCMS. The SCMS is itself processes and strategies for using the data. But right now, I don't see CHAOSS doing any of the work.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that.
So
I
guess I would, oh, go ahead. I guess I was thinking if it's a CHAOSS program, CHAOSS has to have a mechanism for performing the work or a knowledge of the processes. And so that could be Vinya working. I mean, I know she's got a private enterprise, but everybody involved in CHAOSS does. But working to some extent through CHAOSS to make that a program that exists in some way within CHAOSS, maybe following the Grimoire Lab liturgy model or something like that.
I was gonna say, yeah, like the kid maintain as part of ST Suite. Let's say like one of the example things, like maybe it's the air table, or maybe it's just the document itself. Like we're maintaining this methodology and a good template for you to run with. If you want to run with it yourself, go for it. We can maybe even ensure it's under Creative Commons, like it's clearly denoted as Creative Commons, so it fits into our open source nature here. And then separately, you can say like, this is the do-it-yourself, which open source is always really good at. And if you're looking for more support on doing so, here are the people that we recommend.
That works.
I
think, yeah, that works. And I think that follows just what Sean was talking about. Like there's the Grimoire Lab. Like if you have a question about the software, you can join the community call, you can join the Grimoire Lab calls. But if you really want to deploy this in a kind of an extensive or an enterprise way, this isn't the place to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta go somewhere else.
Totally. Yeah, like that's the extent of our ability. Does that hit home for you, Georg, for what we were thinking there?
Yes, I just want to make sure that we have thought that through a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so I love this. It's definitely out of, I feel like we're a bit, I love the nature of Value Group, but we always end up having to think about the whole CHAOSS project a little bit. So I guess I lost track of this thread. Is there already an issue in like the governance repo on like what we were talking about around programs? or did I for? Trying to think of
No.
like where we should.
Did someone have an
continue
action item to do that?
I think it might have been me. My past self is vaguely remembering. What my
We did
current
not
self
record
is.
one in the last meeting.
Okay, no worries. Well,
I think it's not a bad action item to
Yeah.
discuss these programs.
Yeah.
And I think I think we talked about putting them on the website, so maybe a discussion does not start. Maybe I don't know, maybe an issue isn't necessary. What do you think, Matt Sherman Pray?
I was going to make a suggestion that we could talk about these in the community call.
Yeah,
Just
that's
because
a good
they
idea.
they provide coverage across the entire project,
Definitely.
and that would be one less thing for you to do, Matt. So
Yeah,
there.
Yeah, I was trying to think like how do I I have a recency bias, so we're just talking. We just did an assessment on how people like to interact with information. It's like you want to make a decision as soon as you heard something, or are you the kind of person that likes to think on it and respond later? I think we've got a mix in our communities, like where it's to people ahead of time to think about. But if there's room on the agenda for the next community meeting, maybe one of us could commit to emailing it out ahead of time, or we'll discuss it.
No, I'd be happy to do that. I just, because the program concept exists in Common, if that's where the community reports kind of reside, and the program concept exists in DNI, and the program concept exists in Value, perhaps the meta community place is the way to talk about it.
Absolutely. I fully agree.
I think the most immediate next action is to continue the conversation with Vinya and Dylan and find out what their willingness to commit is and how we can have that conversation with them.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they cannot make the community calls, then that would not be a good place to advance it if they are going to be the stewards.
Yeah,
maybe the SCMS is a program that requires its own meetings, because the community reports and the badging program have both had separate, maybe perhaps not routine meetings, but have had a group of core people working on those things who meet periodically under the CHAOSS umbrella. And I think maybe my concern is just making sure that they're engaged and they feel supported, and that what we're doing is all part of the CHAOSS community, or there are parts of it that are clear that become CHAOSS value items.
Yeah, I like that idea of separating it from our discussion of like how do programs work in CHAOSS. Like that's a great one for the weekly meeting versus SCMS tactics. Like we have to talk to Benny and Dylan separately about that, make sure it works for them. But I think we're like still coming to the same sort of consensus on what a program is, and should talk to other group leads and members in our weekly meetings.
Good. Georg, who knows Venya and Dylan the best?
Yeah, I can do that. I started a thread after our last meeting 2 weeks ago, and I can just reply to that again.
Oh, right, about even moving it out of a metric and into the program state. Okay.
Yep.
Exactly.
Cool. Right on. Thanks.
Very cool. Super interesting. Great. Next up would be discussing progress around social value. So, Matchy, what was your thought on that?
Right. So the issue is we had talked about defining metrics that could live under the social value focus area. So if I put the spreadsheet in here. So we have the social value, kind of this top one, rows 14 through 18. And we have no metrics. So the discussion that came up was, what are the metrics that we can use to better identify social value? And the response was, and so Elizabeth had reached out to some of her friends because she's worked in this space about what would be those metrics. And I think the response she got was, what is social value? So like, it was like a kind of a
Oh,
pushback.
shoot.
Yeah. So saying not like, what is it, but how do you define social value? Because it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And so I think my request here is that we find a definition for social value that we aim at so that we can define metrics that can provide insight on that definition.
And stop me if this is this may be an obvious question, but just to follow the thread, were these sub questions that we already have, like does the project improve access, justice, equity, equality, like were those included and people are like, that still doesn't really answer the question?
I don't think she had included those, but I don't exactly know.
Okay, fair enough.
And personally, I think we can define social value any way we want within like a normal sense of how other people might think about it. But as long as we're clear on our definition, then it can provide context. And if somebody interprets social value slightly differently, then we can say that's great. But that's just not, those aren't the bounds of how we're coming to understand social value, at least in the CHAOSS project for now.
Yeah.
They're a guide, but they're not the full scope. Is that fair?
Yeah, it gives us a defensible logic. It just gives us a defensible space for the metrics that we are proposing to
Makes
provide
sense.
insight towards social value.
So I looked at, I did some looking around on the beginning of the meeting, it was brought up, and a lot of following for social value that I did not expect. So there's like a social value conference. There's organizations for standards for social value. I just dropped one of the links in here that's what is social value. But
Oh, you added that. This is really cool. Thanks, Matt. So do you have any takeaways from that so far? I'm just getting into it.
the way I have is that there's a standardized framework for how to measure, and I guess measure and report is what it says in there, which makes sense. But that might be a good framework to build their metrics off of. I'm not sure.
I like the definition they have. Social value is about the long-term well-being and resilience of individuals, communities, and society in general. Long-term well-being and resilience.
I agree.
Where did you paste this link?
In the meeting minutes.
Oh, I looked in 3 places. I looked in 2 places, but not the meeting. Wait a minute. Okay, yeah, I see. Okay, I'm following the. I got to the GitHub issue. No, that was. I must have.
I put it in Zoom too.
Okay, social value portal. Got it.
There's also, it's not social value. I'll put it in the chat. But the Ford Foundation uses the term social justice. I agree. I like that definition, as Georg pointed out.
Georg, where was that definition? I missed it.
I just wrote it in our minutes, and it comes out of, it's the second paragraph of the page that Matt Snell shared. It's the last sentence.
One about how to define social impact outcome metrics, which might be helpful too.
Social value. I like the bolded one. Social value is about the long-term well-being and resilience of individuals, communities, and society. And I think at some point we have to interject how it's related to production of goods, and particularly open goods, including software, data, and other items of value that serve. So our social value, that's a good definition of social value. I think our purpose is to define metrics, programs, software, and other things that serve how the internet in general advances social value. Did we lose Matt Truman?
Totally agreed. What?
Oh, okay. Apparently I'm on a different size screen than you. Apparently it's not big enough for all of you to be displayed, so I didn't see you and I thought you were gone.
Do they have
Oh, but I like
metrics? The
No,
social
this
value portal?
doubtful.
I think they're more focused on their TOMS framework, which is the like pretty much a standards framework for like measuring. So it's kind of like metrics.
Is it about measuring social value?
Yeah.
Even
National Social Value Measuring Framework, or National TOMS.
even they have this social value for commissioners, social value for business, social value for investors, social value for organization with a special purpose. So like they have the focus area and the social value for that focus area. Like whether for social value for organization or investor for society.
And where are you looking for that?
Here is the
Yeah, I see the diagram, although there's a simpler one.
Thank you.
Would I be on point if I suggested these are good resources for us to refer to as we define the CHAOSS open source definition of social value?
Yeah.
Yeah, understatement of the world right there, Sean.
Okay, all right.
It's like we just uncovered a gold mine of people who've probably dedicated, certainly more time than us, if not their lives, to documenting this stuff.
But yeah, I mean, I see a lot of these links are related to companies that are trying to make money off of social value, or whatever that is, and including this one. So I'm not against people making money, but I know we want to provide an open source framework that people can consume and engage in.
So it looks like the link that Matt Snell provided, the social value portal, is pretty high level. It's like at the organizational level, like many different things that a company can do.
Right.
Where ours would be more localized on. Go ahead.
Is this Venus Enterprise, the social value portal?
No.
Okay. All right. I knew she did some of this market work, so I wasn't sure. National TOMS.
So I think ours would be working with the language that's on this site, but trying to draw more direct relationships to open source community work or open source engagement, which I'm guessing, has anybody seen open source at all or software on this site?
Mm-mm.
Great point. Not once.
Both of these are commercial enterprises. And I don't see any commitment to open source software on either of them.
Okay.
So like I said, they're good resources, I think.
The framework itself is open source, or the TOMS is. I know that much.
I have to find that part of it, but that's just because sometimes that's buried.
And when you say it's open source, what does that mean, Matt? Like the documents or the
Download the TOMS. See what that takes me to.
It's under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. That's a long name for a license.
That's a copyright license, though.
CCNA, yada yada. But by the definition, so CCNA fits under, it is compliant with open source licenses by the OSI definition.
So the social value portal basically allows us to use content and with attribution. Would that be accurate?
The social value portal.
Yes,
whatever.
it is attribution.
Okay, so as long as we provide attribution, if there's content here that we value, we can at least give credit.
Yeah. Oh, okay. They're using CC by NC and D. Yeah. No commercial, no derivative. Okay. That's not an open.
No. It's but it's a good source of inspiration. It's not like these concepts are like they invented them.
Yeah.
They just put them together.
I'm learning new things about licenses today. I should have known this already, but that's okay.
Oh, no way, man. CC, Creative Commons is a deep well. There's so many because it's that top level framework, and then it branches into a ton of stuff that I've had to learn so I can not get my team sued on opensource.com. Yeah, it's pretty wild. But
So if we stuck with that definition that that Matt put in, and then Garrick pulled out, which is the social value is the long-term well-being and resilience of individuals, communities, and society. It gets a little weird with the "and society" part, but
I think industry would work better there.
social values, the long-term well-being and resilience of individuals. That makes sense. The long-term well-being and resilience of communities. That also makes sense. The long-term resilience, well-being and resilience of society.
I think of that one, like if we talk about like that rings in my head as like the tragedy of the commons, especially
Okay.
around open source software management. Like, um, like are people? Is this project helping? For instance, is this project helping OpenSSL stay
I see.
funded, so that like we don't have these gaping holes in our foundational technologies? Like,
Gotcha.
I would rank something high on social value if it is helping fund an essential technology, and that has
Okay.
like a societal benefit and possibly an individual benefit to the person who's the maintainer of it.
So that's totally fair. Right. OpenSSL is a good example because it's not just an individual
Yeah,
making
yeah.
one person's life better, and it's not just about making one community's life better.
No, it's like that bedrock technology, and there's so
Okay.
many of those. That's the only lens I'm familiar with for social, recognizing it's not the entire scope.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, what are people's thoughts on this definition? If we just took it, I mean, I'm all for if somebody else has taken the time to define a term.
Yeah.
And to Matt Broberg's point, if these are people who know what they're talking about, it might give us a very reasonable starting point that as we're reaching out to other people, they might ask for a little bit of tweaking, but I think this is a good starting point.
I think we either want to have something like advancing the social, that's a good bullet point. I agree. I think part of the charter or the front page piece needs to also be about advancing the social value of the internet, or perhaps production of shared goods on the internet. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because that is.
Can you write it?
Yeah, I'm writing it in the notes.
Okay. Elizabeth just joined. So Elizabeth,
Cool.
we're trying to
Just
define the term. We're trying to define social value.
Just that little quick discussion, I'm sure.
Yeah, we're
so
done.
if you could just throw out your best definition real quick.
I gotta think a minute.
Oh yeah, please do. We're just messing with you at this point.
One of the questions I have is, with societal value, are we asking what societal value does a community provide, as in bringing well-being and resilience to individuals, communities, not necessarily open source communities, and society in general? Or are we thinking about the societal value inside the open source community we're analyzing, and how it brings well-being resilience to its own individuals, its own community?
I think
Mine
it's
was
the first one.
The former.
So it assumes objectivity in a sense, and consistency that we can't really rely on. That's why I'm almost leaning more towards the Ford Foundation terminology, because it uses terms that are more direct. Instead of saying societal, like we are a society that I may be presuming a lot of the 7 heads on this call, but we probably lean towards strengthening democratic values as opposed to like fascist values.
Social justice has an advantage and a disadvantage over social value. social justice communicates that these are things that are good for all humans, regardless of the cultural context within which they live. Social value can get loaded by localized cultural context. It also has a little bit of a lightning rod effect in American discourse because the term social justice warrior, SJW, is often used as a pejorative towards people who try to advance these values. So the Ford Foundation language has a little bit of a trade-off.
Yeah,
But
I would.
it's still, don't you think social justice is subjective? Like, uh, who are they who is deciding it's good for the entire human?
I think there's more agreement on what social justice is than what social value is. However, social value, I think, is, I don't know, I like social justice because I think it's what we're really talking about. I don't think there's much variation in what it means. Social value, I think, is a new construct that hasn't been widely promoted and is open to some interpretation.
It's all a matter of what you want to come in and try to define too.
Right. So we have more latitude and less baggage with social value than with social justice. But can someone paste the Ford definition?
It's in
Oh,
there.
it's in there.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was
where
also
is it?
thinking that when I looked up a lot of
Can
these
you make me not hunt
definitions,
for it? Where is it?
what's up?
Where is
Put it
it?
in there. I'll put it in there.
Is it in the? Is it? And we say
There.
there. Did you mean
The
notes or
chat.
the? Okay,
It's
that's
bright
where
yellow.
I get a little concerned. I get a little confused sometimes when you say from there because I'm looking at the notes in the chat. And trying to figure out
Sorry.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, we're officially
So-
This is
officially not
global
using
to chaos.
chat.
I got
Putting-
in, but I just wanted to mention before I left, get my point. But I wanted to mention that a lot of these definitions are mentioning different tiers of social value as they go. So you're seeing like individuals, communities, and society. We're seeing different ways that your poverty and injustice, strengthen democratic values, promote international cooperation. So that sounds like whatever we land on, a lot of different things that we're measuring within that social value spectrum, and then we can use those as the metrics possibly, because there would be the things that we're trying to accomplish, right? So I'm thinking a lot of these can be broken down into several metrics on their own. I don't know.
And you're talking about the poverty, the injustice, like
He's actually, this doesn't have any of
Oh.
this. This has none of the social justice baggage because it doesn't use that term. I like this.
But you're saying, Matt Snell, like basically from the Ford Foundation definition, like poverty, injustice, democratic values, like those could be the metrics. Am I following?
Yeah, I'm thinking like if you measure, these things are completely separate things that you can measure in my mind.
That's a really wise point, potentially.
I would like to also see something mentioned about health, either mental health or physical health. Maybe that goes in with our part of the well-being and resilience, but I think that's an important piece to add that they don't really touch on.
so reduce poverty, injustice, strengthen democratic values, improve health and mental well-being.
And also maybe something like economic disadvantages or something, because I know there's some open source projects that help with like financial issues in like disadvantaged communities.
Yeah.
How can you say that in 3 words?
No, I don't know.
It's usually like economic equality.
Alex putting something in there.
No, it's not really.
Or like quality of life, something like that too.
So we have. Do you see the minutes?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm
so
looking at them.
Okay. So reduce poverty and injustice, strengthen democratic values, improve health and mental well-being, promote international cooperation, strengthen economic equality, and advance human achievement.
And those could, I think Matt S said before he left, those could even be kind of our like sub focus areas for this
Mm-hmm.
part, maybe. And then have metrics that tie directly back to one of those things.
Yeah, and at the sentence I added through support for the health and sustainability of internet shared production communities to create data, software, and information that advances these aims. And maybe that's a separate bullet, it's not in the definition. But I mean, I think that's what we are doing, right? Like there's some scope that includes that boundary on our efforts. We're not UNICEF.
Yeah, I like that.
So I think to Matt's point, go ahead, Georg.
I just want to say I replaced the strengthen with foster economic equality because we have strengthened twice.
Okay. Need to get our term straight.
Stands to reason our best writer is not an English native speaker. So. America.
I have a question. So, like the way we have refined this for social justice definition, so is our focus on all these individual aspects, measuring all these individual aspects through our definitions or defining metrics?
I think that defines an outer boundary. I don't think it means we have to do it all. We certainly shouldn't start everywhere.
Kind of remember like if we follow Matt Snell's approach towards basically just taking each one of these terms and turning it into a metric, it's probably not going to be that simple. But if we just start with that approach, the goal for these metrics is to improve transparency on, in this case, what we're calling now social justice. And it's highly likely that one project won't take on all of these things, but one project will take on one or a subset of these things, providing improvement towards social justice. Does that make sense?
To me, it looks like a kind of a separate working group which develops every aspect of a social justice rather than just a value group defining the value for the society.
There's certainly enough space to do so if we felt like that was the direction the group was going. But I don't think there's the demand, but like our goal is to be able to encompass future demand and concepts within the definition of value, is my understanding.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess I agree with you, but I don't think that means we need to go fill all that gap. We're just trying to create
if our first metric is on the scale and scope of the STMS, that's probably what will happen.
I agree, because I think we're, the word value, and we like most of it has been economic value and financial value to companies and such. And so this is like completely different segment of value, but it's like you said, it's large enough that I think it could merit its own group, just as it's so deep and complicated.
I'll make a suggestion then. Let's keep it here for now and just kind of see how it goes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think this is a fine home for it, and there's not enough demand, to be honest. Like we'll do a cursory effort to get some metrics in there, and hopefully that'll attract some attention and further contribution. And if that spins off, and we've got room, there's only six in the room right now. There's plenty of time to talk about it here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see what happens after that.
So did we kind of settle on the Ford Foundation
definition? Yeah, I think there was consensus there, I think.
Okay, so I'm going to take this and put it into the spreadsheet.
Mm-hmm.
My question is, can we just call it societal value to keep in line with what we have?
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, we launched it with social, but I think there with no metrics underneath. I think it was really like we're changing the name of an empty directory, which seems legit to me.
And then,
Awesome.
so then,
So are you including the sentence that I proposed in the definition that we use? Because I think we have to say something about what we do, because the scope of the Ford definition as is far broader than anything we aim to accomplish here.
I hadn't included it. Could you propose through support for the health and sustainability of internet?
Basically, you would just, or it could be a second sentence that's begun with, we will for these goals are addressed in CHAOSS through support for the health and sustainability. Yeah. It's like a sentence, I guess a second sentence. No, I can get rid of the parentheses if you want. In the proposed.
I don't understand what the second sentence is supposed to do.
Well, the first sentence is extraordinarily broad and it encompasses a scope far beyond CHAOSS. And so I was trying to add something that made where CHAOSS's goals and focus are around this rather large goal.
Like the idea that first is a broader what is social value or social justice, and how we are focused in the chaos on that.
Yeah, so social value is kind of a definition of what is social value, and then what are the aims of CHAOSS in the promotion of social value. I think they have to be specific and targeted. And I think they can be broader than software. But they could just be software.
I was thinking of a slightly different approach to accomplish the same goal.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking we have the focus area social value, and
Yes.
we start our focus areas with identify usually.
Mm-hmm.
And so identify whether an open source project, and then we include our definition afterwards.
I see. Yeah, I mean that changed. I don't think that was. Yeah, that adding that addresses that change, and there may or may not be value now to the second sentence I added. I think that identifying with an open source project. Yeah.
And we can use this as our focus area goal.
Yeah.
Can you paste that into the spreadsheet, Georg, that update?
Yeah. I do think I think when it no, this is good. This is narrower.
I'll create a pull request for it too.
Do we want to say the degree to which, or just is it a binary yes or no?
Yeah. I mean, it's not binary.
Yeah, it's not.
No, it's not.
Matt, this hijacked the meeting.
That's part of the meeting. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I did have a questions about making discrete metrics for everything under SCMS, but I think that can wait till next meeting.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that will be
We're
a
out of
great
time.
one.
We're out of time.
Good, great to see all of you. Thank you.
Likewise.
Elizabeth,
Sorry I
thanks
was
for
late.
saving the day on the definition here.
Yeah. Well done.
Yeah, no worries, Jane. See you next time.
I changed my name, didn't I? Yeah, I didn't.
Oh,
No, I didn't. That's hilarious. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Take care, all.